Well, one of the cuts that's under consultation at the moment is the Bush Residential Care Home, and I'm joined by Rita Lynch, whose son, Jimmy, goes to the Bush. Rita, can you just tell us a bit about the place?
The Bush, it's an amazing resource. It's a respite centre for children who are disabled, and it takes 10 children a night. It's got 10 beds. My son Jimmy's been using it for the last 4 years. He goes one night a week. And what's so amazing about it is it's fantastic for the parents because you can really trust it, because it has a team of qualified, experienced staff who know how to deal with these children. So you can trust, as a parent, you can trust your child is really well looked after and really safe and really protected. Plus, the children really enjoy it because the staff make sure that the combinations of children work really well each night. Say, for instance, because my son wasn't very verbal when he first started, they made sure he was with children who were more verbal so that he actually learnt. So it's not just a place where, as a parent, you send your child to get a break. The child actually learns and gains something from being there.
George, what are your thoughts about what's happening with the Bush? Because you're actually, at the end of the day, you're the person that signs off whether these cuts happen or not. Rita was told around about a year ago, we've had a good look at the Bush, we don't think it's a good idea to close it. And now there's another consultation. I've got a statement from the City Council here, which is from Amy Bullen, who says, we appreciate that families using the respite service are under great pressure. We need a break from time to time. However, many families are choosing alternative ways in which they want their services delivered for those they care for. We're increasing the availability of direct payments and other targeted short breaks while retaining the majority of our residential provision. All of this is aimed at giving families a greater choice and control and has enabled us to create short breaks for 50 more disabled children in the city. We're in communication with all families who use the Bush, and many of them will have no reduction in their service. We want to reiterate that disabled children and their families will continue to get their needs met for the residential short breaks in Bristol. But
you said what I was going to say.
The key thing there is most families at the Bush.
But Rita, Jimmy is able to carry on the Bush.
Jimmy has been. I had a letter saying that Jimmy's place was going to be able to use it. But
I've
George,
checked on that.
I do want to inform you. I think I need to let you know that yes, Jimmy's going to keep his place.
I knew that, even though I didn't know you were coming today.
But the whole nature of the Bush will change when there's less children using it. When there's only 5 beds and 5 children using it a night, it will become more of an emergency resource respite centre, and it won't have the combinations of children, which is so crucial to the well-being of the child when they stay there, will really, really change. So, for instance, the children will be maybe more severely disabled, and they won't get as much from it. So it will change. Yeah, Jimmy's place, they've reassured me it will stay.
I'm pleased about that.
But it will change. The whole nature of the Bush will change. And when Jimmy first went, there was a waiting list because you have to get referred by your social worker. And what I'm here for really is to appeal to you to leave the Bush, because there's only 10 beds and there's only 5 other beds. In the whole of Bristol, there's 15 beds.
No, there's 10 other beds, in the whole
there's
of Bristol. 5
at the New Bellbrook and there's 10 at the Bush. There's 15 altogether. If anything, we need more. And I know what the statement says that Tony just read out is that there's other things. Well, the thing is, when I was given the choice of the Bush, I was offered at the time foster. There are other things. They've been there for a very long time. But most parents didn't want to do foster because there was a meeting at the Bush. We prefer the Bush because it's so much safer, because there's a team of staff. You're not just relying on one kind woman or one couple to look after your child. And we know that nobody can get at these children. They're just so safe. They're so very well looked after and protected. Given that some of these children are non-verbal and have very complex needs, very complex, I also would I can imagine it's going to be very hard to find foster parents who can cope with the nature of these children's disabilities. At the Bush, you have a sensory room, you have computers, you have a really big outside area. Well, how can a foster home will not have those amazing resources? And say Jimmy was a very mummy orientated child. Since he's been using the Bush, he's got so much more independent. He talks about the other boys. You wouldn't have that in a foster environment. And also direct payments and the other things that you're saying, which is really unclear from the statement what exactly they are offering. They don't compare with the overnight facility, because sometimes with the nature of autism, your child wakes up all night. Sometimes the best thing is an overnight break where you know your child is really safe and happy and also going to maybe learn something from what they're from the Bush, and then you can really relax and get the break that you really need so that you can continue with your caring role. Because what happens to some families is that they break down and they end up losing their child to full-time residential, which would end up costing so much more.
Yeah. Can I just
and
say,
also families
I'll
would be
just
broken.
put yourself in my position. I think Jimmy goes to Hengrove to swim, doesn't he? And that together with the bush. So when he goes
on his night, yes,
he goes
they
on
all
Monday.
go.
He goes on Mondays. Goes to Hengrove swimming pool, and that's great. And he'll be able to continue to do that. You put yourself in my position. This is not a cut. This is about a redirection of money for similar purposes. But we need to service so many more. And if I can provide services for 50 more children by having direct payments, by having other ways
but we already have direct payment.
Yeah, by having other forms of respite. To use that over £300,000 that is saved by those 5 beds, then we are servicing many, many more children, and many of the service users and their parents or their carers of the bush have decided to take that alternative and are very happy with it. So I understand the attachment, and I totally sympathetic
not just an attachment,
with it. No, but I'm
actually.
totally sympathetic
That's quite
with
insulting.
it. No, it's not.
It
I
is.
do understand that.
It is.
And it's perfectly fair to call it an attachment, and that is what you have with the bush.
My son and
that is
his
great.
children are not just an attachment, they're real people.
No, I'm talking about your attachment to the bush. That is a perfectly reasonable way of
George,
describing
because
it.
what you're implying there is there's some sort of emotional thing. It's not, is it? It's actually about why we pay our taxes. We pay our taxes for facilities like this, and this is one of the things which really is the sharp end of the cuts. Yeah. Let's be honest about it. There are cuts.
I'm being absolutely honest about it, Tony. This is not a cut. What it is spreading the money further to be able to give services and to give respite. Could you not interrupt? To be able to give respite to more young people, and that's what I really care about in this city. The vulnerable young people absolutely come top of my list of the people we need to look after in this city. And so I'm absolutely certain that, having talked to other users, that and some of whom are very happy to take alternative offers, that this is going to result in more services for more young people who desperately need them. So I'm faced with these choices, and I think you have to respect the fact that I in the end have taken a decision was taken in October 2014, and so there's been a lot of lead up to this. So there are no surprises, and we will, we're taking into account people's wishes.
Okay, George, I am going to interrupt you here because this is a bit of a surprise, because Rita was promised that the place was going to stay open.
No, she wasn't.
Etc.
No, she wasn't.
Last year, I thought you were, Rita. Anyway, that's my understanding.
Yeah,
what I see here, George, maybe I'm wrong, but what I see here is a little bit like this whole care in the community, where mental homes were closed down. People were told, oh, it's okay, we'll give you payments in the community. Those payments were slowly gone. What often happens in situations like that is, once the institution itself is reduced and closed, then actually the people are isolated and on their own. They're not actually being cared for in an institution. And those institutions, whether it be a hospital, a care home like the Bush, it's why we pay our taxes, surely.
Of course, and that's why we're continuing. That's why Jimmy will be able to continue at the Bush, and I think
appreciate that. Of course,
let's let Rita have a final.
I appreciate that, but George, it's. I know you say it's not a cut, because what you're doing is you're taking money from what you want to do is close the 5 beds at the Bush.
Well, 5 beds costing nearly £350,000.
Because I think what you're saying is you're going to offer more choices to people.
Yes.
You should leave the Bush as a choice, because when you reduce it by 5 beds to make it only 5, it will be for more emergency cases, because the Bush does do emergencies. Sometimes, a couple of times, they've had to cancel our night because they've got an emergency, very severely, disabled child. Yeah. You need to leave it as a choice, as a viable choice. The Bush has been running for about 30 years. It has serviced so many parents and so many children. And like I say, my son Jimmy has actually come on since using the Bush. It's more than
he's lovely, your son Jimmy.
I know, he's
great.
He's an absolute angel.
Yeah.
It's actually an educational facility as well as a respite unit. It's so much more than it actually says. And yeah, fair enough. Offer parents the other foster or whatever. I mean, I get direct payments as well as the bush because of the nature of my son's disability.
And that's good, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean, that's been a good move, having
but
direct payments.
I really do. That's why I'm here, is to please say this is so much more than you can ever imagine. The bush is so much more amazing. Just to please leave it. Just to please leave it.
But I think
it is, because
so have you decided not to do that, George? You're not going to.
It sounds like you've decided to cut it.
Absolutely, we have decided.
You've decided you're going to take the 5 beds.
We have decided.
That's absolutely. Well, could you,
those 5
George?
beds,
I want to ask you. Could you call it? Could you please? I've asked one of your workers, Jean Pollard, to call a meeting for parents at the bush so that we can all completely understand it, because we were given, back in a meeting at the council in February, we were given to believe, because most of the councillors agree apparently that the bush should stay as it is, and we were given to believe that it was not going to get touched until at least maybe April, or until you had all the other foster care or whatever in place. Then out of the blue we get a letter saying it's closing. The 5 beds are closing in September.
Well, you were misled if anybody gave you the impression that it was otherwise. Well, you certainly weren't misled by me, because I made it really clear.
Could you call a meeting for parents at the bush, because you have the authority and the power, obviously,
I don't see the point now. We've made the decision is made.
Please, George, hang on. I've only got a few minutes here, please.
Okay, your final say now,
yes,
Rita.
because we got a letter saying that it's closing in September.
It's not
if
closing.
You could call a meeting
it's
for
carrying
the
on,
parents,
and
so
you
that
will
we
be
could,
able to carry on.
All the parents are so confused. We would just like to have somebody front us, face us, man up, face us, tell us you're closing it, and give us. Tell us a random letter through the post.
I told you
it's really
Rita.
Not good enough. It's quite insulting. So you're definitely going to close the 5 beds.
We're definitely going to close the 5 beds. In September, if that's what you've been told.
So you've got all the other.
I mean, I rely on.
Have you got 50 foster parents to accommodate that? Maybe parents don't. I would never have put Jimmy into foster care. He's my son.
Well,
I don't want
you're
a
not
foster
having
mother.
to. That's
well,
why,
I don't have
but
to.
But others are choosing
to do
He's
my son.
No, but.
Other parents, at the first meeting that was called, one parent said, putting my child into foster care, I might as well hand him to a paedophile. And we all know with the bush that these children are so safe because there's a team of staff.
Yeah,
I implore you
can I
to
say
change
that
your
many
decision, George,
parents have taken an alternative view, and I know
you say that. I don't believe you, because I know more more parents of disabled children than you.
Well, Rita, we're going to have to move on. So can you just say your final comment?
But I don't like the scaremongering.
Please, George, I don't really care, because these are the most vulnerable people in society, these disabled children, and they're going to stay disabled forever. I am imploring you, George, please leave it. It will cause so much suffering for us and for future parents and disabled children. Please leave the bush.
Well, Rita,
as it is.
I don't want to leave you with a wrong impression. The fact is, the bush will have 5 beds. Your son, Jimmy, who is a great spirit, and I've seen him, will be able to carry on using the bush. Others have chosen other paths. This will enable 50 more children to be able to benefit from the funds that we save from those 5 beds.
Okay, well, thanks both of you for keeping it reasonable and reasonably polite. But anyway, I think you've both made your views very, very clear on that particular one, George. I mean, George, you're a wealthy man, couldn't you?
I was going to say that. Can you put your hand in your pocket to help these children?
It's a ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing that I'm not. I
went to see the Pope.
I went to see the Pope. Yes, I know. And the Pope is wonderful, and I share his belief in humanity, but. I absolutely, I'm not a rich man. You think I'm a rich man, can solve all problems.
No. Look,
I'm a social entrepreneur. I give a lot away, and it is a ridiculous refrain somehow that I can step in and replace
okay, George,
public funds.
That's a very clear no.
Yeah.
Can we move on now? Because the ex-Avon and Somerset police chiefs saying Nick Gargan must go.
Thanks,
Nick Gargan,
Rita.
This is the former, thank you very much,
Rita.
Rita Lynch and Jimmy, who's outside the studio.